all Moses are reluctant leaders. They never sought power. They have no desire to lead. They have no need to be in charge. So they are perfect for leadership, because true leadership does not seek power. It seeks to empower people. And true leaders do not seek position. They seek to reposition people. And so this is why true leaders are reluctant leaders. And I've met Nelson Mandela. Had a chance to talk to him. I've met Sir Lyndon Pinling personally, many occasions. And these people have no desire for greatness. They just got caught up in a conviction that was so strong that they decided, I'm going to pay the price to fulfill this conviction. And that's what creates a Moses. Moses wasn't alone. There was a group. It's his sister, his brother, but he emerged as the one who will take the brunt of the attacks and also be the one who's willing to take the chance to die. And Sir Lyndon Pinling is the one who emerged in our context. I think also the reason why I think there's a divine involvement is because all true deliverers, and I use the word deliverers, Sir Lyndon Pinling, like all Moses, they are deliverers. We confuse deliverers with freedom fighters. Sir Lyndon Pinling was not chosen to set the Bahamas free. He was chosen to deliver the Bahamians, the black Bahamians. Moses in Egypt did not set the people free. He was a deliverer of the people. The deliverer simply means someone who takes them out of slavery and places them in the desert. He takes them from physical slavery. The mental slavery is the real issue. That's the tough part. That takes almost a generation to deal with, which I think we are pretty close to it now. I think people expected Moses to set them free. And the Bahamas is not free. And we need to remember that. We are not free. We are delivered. The oppressor is still around, but he has no more physical control over us. But he still has a mental damage on us. We're still mentally damaged. And that's why deliverance is a very difficult period, because you are out of Egypt, but Egypt is not out of you. You are away from the wind of Egypt, but the scent of oppression is still in your nostrils. And so the deliverer will physically set you free. He takes the chains off. He opens the prison doors. He tells you to go out. He even leads you out. But he can't take you in to freedom. Freedom is not a location. It's a mentality. So nothing is worse than taking a slave into freedom without freedom in his mind. There's a scripture I think that's very appropriate for our third world developing countries that I think is perfect description. It's written by Solomon. Solomon says, "Woe to the land when a slave becomes king." That word woe means the land is in trouble. In other words, when a slave becomes king means that even though you give the person power, they still think like a slave. And nothing is worse than a powerful slave, because the mentality will destroy the people. And so wearing a crown doesn't change your mind. It exposes it. And this is why you need that period in deliverance to try and change the mentality of the slave. Because if he doesn't have a mental transformation, the slave will be no benefit to freedom. This is probably why when you read the story of Moses and the children of Israel, you'll discover that all of the people who came out of Egypt, all of them died in the desert. God didn't allow them to go in. Matter of fact, God told them, you will not enter the land. And he told them why. He said, because you have not changed your minds. So he kept them alive long enough to take what they were carrying out of them, which is the next generation. 40 years is a generation. So after 40 years, their children were born. These kids know nothing about Egypt. Then God buried all the parents. And Joshua, therefore, is always a younger symbol. And he has a glimpse of the future very clearly. But he also has an appreciation of the past. And there has to be a point in every national journey where the Moses must take the baton and give it to Joshua. This is where our countries have problems, because Moses is the famous guy. Moses is the guy who represents the symbol of power. He's the one everybody looks to for counsel. Everybody thinks that he has all the answers. So there's a temptation for the Moses to almost begin to believe his own fan mail. And he begins to also think of himself as more important than he really is. And that's dangerous. And this is why when you study the story of Moses, God told Moses, look, it's over. Now, Moses, keep in mind, is a symbol, which means, and if you read the transition between Moses and Joshua, they're actually two different books in the Bible. The last book that Moses wrote is called Deuteronomy. The last chapter of it, it says, and Moses died. And the last few verses says, and Moses was dead. And Moses laid hands on Joshua, presented him before the people. He went to the mountain, and then he never came back again. Matter of fact, the reason why God made sure that no one could find his grave is a very important thing. Because you can almost be so busy worshiping his history, you never make a future. So he doesn't want them to even know where the tomb is. No one knows where Moses was buried. So that's an important symbol. We should not worship Moses to the point where we can't create Joshua's. And so the last thing that is said about Moses is he died. When you turn the page, the next book is Joshua. But here's what amazes me. And in my book I talk about this. The book of Deuteronomy ends where God says to the people, Moses is dead. When you turn the page, the first chapter of Joshua, which is the next generation, God repeats himself to Joshua, Moses is dead. I think the first one was saying a human died, a physical person died. But the next statement, it's the same statement, but it has a different meaning. It means an era is dead, a whole era, which means I don't want to talk about Moses anymore. Okay, let's not depend on Moses to do what we need to do right now. Okay, let's appreciate him, respect his legacy, remember what he did, but let's move on now to our responsibility with Joshua. It is now your turn to take the people to the next phase, which is into freedom. Moses died on the wilderness side of the Jordan River. On the next side is freedom. So Moses brought us over the Red Sea, which is deliverance. Joshua now has to take us over Jordan, which is freedom. Between the Red Sea and the Jordan River is the wilderness, where we try to get mental transformation. If that can't happen, God creates a new generation, and then he brings them over to freedom. So Joshua is an important person. Joshua is the one who brings the people into freedom. And this is where people begin to be free from the memory of history. They are free from the reproach of history. They begin to take on a sense of their own dignity, their value, their self-worth. They begin to feel that they have good self-esteem. They esteem themselves equal to anybody else. No one is better than them. They become mentally free to the point where they believe nothing is impossible. Though that's the group that Joshua takes over into the land. And so that Joshua is the symbol of the next generation, led by someone who believes that nothing is impossible. The next phase of national development